Welcome to qiphyedu. Today we'll be looking at Economics Paper 13, May, June 2022. Alright, let's start. Okay, so for the first question, it says, which statement about money is correct? So let's look at the four options. A, it says deflation reduces the internal purchasing power of money, which is not correct. Deflation is basically when there's a decrease in the general price level. So this means that the purchasing power of money would increase. So A is not correct because of that. B, it says most financial assets are more liquid than physical assets. Now this is correct. And the reason for that is because financial assets are basically assets that are not physical, like you technically can't see it. Like for example, investments, the shares and all those. You can convert them into money, that's why it says that financial assets are more liquid. Liquid being that you can convert them into money in a short period of time. Physical assets, however, for example, like cars or houses, if you want to sell them off, it takes time. So, but for shares and investments, you can then convert them into money in a short period of time. But if you want to sell a house, sell a car, it will take time. Like you need to find someone that wants to buy the house, for example. So that's why most financial assets are more liquid than physical assets. And C says when the money acts as a medium of exchange, it requires a double coincidence of ones, which is not correct. This is double coincidence of ones will only happen if it's a barter transaction. That means that there's two items, like you exchange one item for another item. Money doesn't require two items. It says you pay for that particular amount and you get the item, and the other person receives money at the end. And then D, when money acts as a store of value, it must be unlimited in supply, which is not correct. Money is not unlimited in supply. In fact, it's actually scarce resources like anything else. So B should be the answer. Question 2, the table shows the amount of direct taxes that different households in the UK paid in 2017 to 2018. Which positive economic statement can be made from the table? So A says direct tax is unfair. Unfair means it's normative economic statement, so it's not correct. B says direct tax in the UK is a proportional tax, so we could technically calculate that. So 2,000 divided by 50,300 times 100, we'll get, we can just use a calculator. This one will be, this one would be 13.1%. And then the second, 20% of households, this would be 3,500 over 25,000. Okay, so 3,500 divided by 25,000 times 100, and then you get 14%. This means that it is proportional instead of proportional. Sorry, it's progressive. Increase in percentage means that it's progressive, so it's not proportional. So it says that direct tax is proportional, so it's not correct. C says poorer households do not pay enough direct tax in the UK, which is not correct. And D says rich households pay more direct tax than poor households in the UK, which is correct because indeed it's a progressive tax. So if let's say you earn more, if you say you earn more of that income, then you have to pay more of taxes. You need to pay more direct taxes. So yes, D is correct. Question 3, what does opportunity cost measure? A says the benefits of a good compared with the next choice. B says the benefits given up by not consuming the next best alternative. And C says the cost of any good not chosen. And D, the financial cost of consuming a good. Now, opportunity cost by definition means that it's the next best alternative forgone. So A says the benefits of a good compared with the next choice, which is not correct. B says the benefits given up by not consuming the other alternative, the other best alternative. So this is correct. And C says the cost of any good not chosen, which is not correct. And D says the financial cost of consuming a good, which is also not correct. So the one that's closest to the definition that I've given just now would be B. Question 4, which term assumes the existence of qualities, knowledge, and skills that allow an individual to be more productive? So this one, qualities, knowledge, and skill, this one will be, let's just look at the four options and then we'll choose the answer. A says enterprise investment, which is not correct. B says human capital, that will be, yes, assumes the qualities, knowledge, and skills, which is human capital. And C says mechanization and specialization. Now, knowledge and skills is mostly what humans have. Actually, basically, that's what all humans should have when it comes to be more productive. So it has to be human capital. Your labor force must be skillful, and they have to have high productivity, so on and so forth. This can be so this means that in order for the term to be to correlate with the existence of qualities, knowledge, and skills, this would be under human capital. So D is also not correct. It's not specialization, so it has to be B, which is human capital. And then 5, the diagrams relate to the markets for 4 different products. And in which market would a 10% decrease in demand and simultaneously a 10% increase in supply definitely result in both a fall in equilibrium price and a rise in equilibrium quantity? A 10% decrease in demand will look something like this. So let's say the demand curve shifts to left, and then an increase in supply, so the supply curve shifts to right. You can see that A, there's an increase in quantity and a decrease in equilibrium price. But let's try and do the same for others first. So let's say the decrease in demand, this will shift to left. For B, D1, increase in supply. This one will result in a decrease in quantity. So this is not the answer. And then for C, a decrease in demand, so demand curve shifts to left. You can see that this one is actually this is an inelastic demand curve, and then an increase in supply. So this will be something like this. Again, there's a decrease in price, but there's also a decrease in quantity. I realize that for B, it's uncertain that the quantity decrease or not. So there is a decrease in price, but it's uncertain whether there's a decrease in quantity. It could be the same quantity. It could be a decrease or it could be increase. It depends on because it's a 10% decrease, so that means that it has to be the same quantity. And D, a 10% decrease in demand, so demand curve shifts to left, and then a 10% increase in supply curve shifts to right. There's a decrease in price and a decrease in quantity. So answer is 8. Question 6, the supply of a new drug to relieve muscle pain is very inelastic over a short period of time. The supply of printed newspapers is much more elastic over the same time period. And what could explain the difference in elasticity of supply of the drug and printed newspapers in this time period? So why is the new drug very inelastic, and why printed newspapers are elastic? So the reason for that is because printed newspapers, we can look at the options here and we choose which one is the correct one. A, it says cost per unit is low, and printed newspapers cost per unit is high, which is not correct. Cost per unit is high for goods that are inelastic, and cost per unit is low for goods that are elastic. And B, discovery is by chance for new drug, which is a reason why it could be inelastic. But for printed newspapers, it says it takes longer to produce, which is not correct. In order for the supply of a particular item to be elastic, it has to be produced in large. It has to be able to be produced in large quantity with spare capacity available. Assuming that, let's say, there's an increase in price, then the percentage change in quantity supply should also be higher than the percentage change in price. So if it takes longer to produce, then the quantity supplied percentage change would actually be lower than the change in price. So B is not correct. C, new drug, it says research and development essential. Yes, that's correct. And printed newspapers, there's excess capacity in printing, which is correct. So the answer should be C, but let's look at the other options that we have here. D, it says there are similar products available, meaning that there are substitutes, but this means that it has to be elastic, so it's not correct. And then printed newspaper, it says similar products are available, which is not correct. There are substitutes. For example, instead of reading newspapers, you could watch TV, get news from online news portals, and from social media. So there are alternatives instead of just reading newspapers. So I'd say C. Question 7, which change would cause the supply curve of sugar sweetened drinks to shift to the right? So if, let's say, the supply curve of sugar sweetened drinks shift to the right, this means that either the cost of production of sugar has decreased, and actually the cost of production for sugar sweetened drinks to decrease, probably a decrease in the price of raw material, which is sugar, or probably there's a because for this case it's microeconomics, so yep, that will be one of the main reasons. So A says a fall in the price of sugar, which is correct. B says a removal of a subsidy, which is not correct. A removal of subsidy will result in the supply curve to shift to the left. C says an increase in consumer income. This would result in the demand curve to shift to the right, not the supply curve. D says an increase of specific tax, which will result in a shift of the supply curve to the left. So answer is A. Okay, so for question 8, the demand for tablets increases while the cost of producing them decreases, and what will be the effect on the price of tablets and the quantity supplied? So this one will be your demand supply graph. Okay, the demand increases and the supply increases as well because the cost producing them decreases, so supply curve shifts to right. So immediately you can see that there is an increase in quantity, but you can see that the price is uncertain. It could be the same price, it could have an increase or decrease, but there's no value to determine that. So indeed, the quantity supplied has increased. So it has to be either B or C, and definitely not A or D because it's certain. But price is uncertain because the price could be the same, it could increase or decrease, so answer is C. Question 9, what is necessary to achieve the best allocation resources using the price mechanism? So 9A, it says producers can maximize their collective interest, which is not correct. B, it says consumers and producers must have perfect knowledge, which is correct. And C, it says the government must be able to apply maximum and minimum prices, which is government intervention. We want to allocate resources using price mechanisms, so C is not correct. And D says the value of price elasticity of supply must be greater than 1. Not necessarily. It has to go both ways. Like for A and D, this really only benefits producers. It doesn't really benefit consumers. So in order for the best allocation to exist, it has to be between both the consumer and also the producer. So both of them must have equal amount of stuff. So to allow for the allocation resources to be the best. So answer has to be B. Question 10, good X, Y, and Z all have downward sloping demand curves and upward sloping supply curves. Good X is enjoying supply with good Y and enjoying demand with good Z. There is an increase in the demand for good X, and what will happen to the prices and sales of goods Y and Z? So there's an increase in demand for a good X. So this means that the when there's an increase in demand for good X, okay, so it has to be something like this. So this one will be a supply demand graph again. This one is for good X. And then now there's an increase in demands of D1, D2. So the demand increases. And then now because of this, if enjoying supply, this means that for good X the demand increases, then for good Y the supply increases, so price falls, so C and D is wrong. So sales rises, so it has been B. Good Z is because it's enjoying demand. So if it's enjoying demand, that means that if let's say the demand for good X increases, this means that the demand for good Z will also increase. So that means that the price will rise and the sales will also rise. So answer is B. Question 11, what is meant by consumer surplus? So consumer surplus is basically the difference between what the consumers are willing to and able to pay and the price that the consumer actually pays for the product. So A says it is the amount by which the price consumers are willing to pay exceeds the market price, which is correct. And then B says it is a difference between the price consumers are willing to pay and the price producers are willing to supply, which is not correct because this means that it's the entire thing. So this is a demand and supply graph again. So this one will be your supply curve, demand curve. Now, assuming that this is the point where this is what the consumers are willing and able to pay, and then this is the price producers are willing to supply. This is the entire area, so it's not correct. This is completely comprising of consumer surplus and producer surplus. And C says it is a discount firms offer to consumers for buying goods in bulk, which is not correct. And D says it is the excess of quantity demanded of a product over its quantity supplied at a given price, which is not correct. So answer is A. Question 12, what does the assumption ceteris paribus mean when economists analyze the way in which the quantity demanded of a good changes? This means that only one variable is going to change, but all the others remain constant. So A, it says changes in quantity demanded can cause changes in any of the other variables, which is not correct. B, it says consumer preferences are always assumed to remain unchanged, which is not correct. And C, it says only one variable is assumed to change while the others remain the same, which is correct. And D, it says several variables change simultaneously, which is not correct. Answer is C. Question 13, the diagram shows a demand curve for a normal product, at which 2 points indicate a move from a price inelastic point to a less price inelastic point. So around W and X, this is where the PED would be more than 1, and then somewhere in the center of this area that I drew a point on, there will be PED equals to 1. For Y and Z, there will be PED less than 1. So now we are trying to move from a price inelastic point to a less price inelastic point. So this could be somewhere from Z to Y or Y to X, or probably, that'll be these two. So W to X would mean that it's from a price elastic point to a less price elastic point, which is not correct. X to W would be already elastic, so it's not exactly correct because the PD is already elastic. And C, it says Y to Z, which means it's from a price inelastic point to an even price inelastic point. And D is price inelastic point to a less price inelastic point from Z to Y. So yeah, this is the answer. Question 14, the diagram shows the effect on the market for rise of a change in government policy that causes a shift in the supply curve from S1 to S2. And what does the area JKLM represent? So a change in government policy, this could mean that there is a decrease in tax or there is an increase in subsidy provided by government. So let's look at the options that we have here. A, it says the cost to government of a subsidy to rice growers. Yep, that's possible because M is the quantity supplied, equilibrium quantity supplied after the subsidy is given. L is the same quantity, but the price of K, which would be the price that is before the subsidy is given. So K would be the price before subsidy and J will be the price after subsidy. M and L being the same quantity, and basically when there's a subsidy given, that will be the equilibrium quantity. So in order to measure the cost that the government pays in order for the quantity to be supplied at this particular amount, it has to be calculated by the entire area of JKOM. So A is correct. B says the extra saving to importers of the removal of a tariff on rice, which is not correct. It doesn't measure the extra saving to importers. And C, the increase in consumer surplus, which is not correct. If you want to calculate the increase in consumer surplus, it should be point somewhere here, and then to point M, which would be something like this, but not the entire area. And D says the loss in government revenue from the reduction in the lump sum tax on rice, which is not correct. So answer is A. Question 15, the table shows 4 categories of government expenditure over 2 time periods, and by how much have transfer payments changed between periods 1 and 2. So let's look at what would be transfer payments here. A, it says building of new roads. This is not under transfer payment. Welfare benefits is under transfer payment. C, it says pay of armed force is not under transfer payment. And state pension is under transfer payment. So for period 1, it's 1700. And then for period 2, it's 1800. So there's an increase in $100. So $100,000. So it's B. Question 16: which type of tax is used in different countries is a direct tax? So A, says corporation tax in India that is imposed on the profits of companies. This one is direct tax. B, says import duties in Brazil that are imposed on imported goods. This one is indirect tax. C, says specific tax in South Africa imposed on the purchase of cigarettes. This one is also indirect tax. D, says stamp duty in Malaysia that is taxed on the purchase of residential property, which is also indirect tax. The answer is A. 17, it says a government imposes the maximum price of medical face masks below the market equilibrium. Now, what is the most likely effect of this? A, it says some consumers will be unable to buy face masks at the maximum price, which is correct. B, it says firms will produce more masks to meet the excess demand, which is not correct. C, it says poorer consumers will be able to obtain all the masks, which is not correct. D, it says the market will clear, which is also not correct. The reason why B, C, D is not correct is because firms are because the price is already below the equilibrium, and that means that the market price is actually decreased, there will be a shortage. And firms wanting to maximize profit will not produce more masks to meet the excess demand. And C, poor consumers are not going to be able to obtain all the masks because of the limited quantity, and people will actually just buy it and then sell it on the black market for a higher price. So actually, it's doing more harm than good to poor consumers. And D, says the market will clear at the maximum price, which is not correct. The market will clear at the equilibrium price. So answer is A. Question 18, what is not a producer subsidy? A, it says a grant given to cover losses in an essential industry such as the railway industry. This is a producer subsidy. And then B, it says a guaranteed minimum price paid to farmers to ensure long-run supply of food. This one is under producer subsidy. C, it says financial assistance given to a pharmaceutical company to develop new vaccine. This is producer subsidy. And D, it says a payment made to the unemployed to allow them to buy essential goods and services. This one is a transfer payment because there's no production that takes place. So answer is D. Question 19, the diagram shows an aggregate demand curve and what is measured on the horizontal axis and the vertical axis, basically the x and y axis. So for an AD curve, the x-axis would be a real GDP, and then y will be a price level. So let's see which one is the answer. A says money national output and real disposable income, which is not correct. Now for B, it's the other way around, so it's not correct. So C, and D is also not correct. So answer is C. Question 20, what could explain an improvement in terms of trade for a country? An improvement in terms of trade will be the price of exports being higher than your price of imports. So A says an increase in tariffs. This will result in an increase in price of imports, so it's not correct. B says a decrease in the volume of imports, so which is not going to result in an improvement in terms of trade, but rather it will result in an improvement in the balance of trade. And C, an increase in the price of exports, which would improve the terms of trade. And D, a decrease in the volume of exports, so this one will worsen the balance of trade. So answer is C. 21, what is the correct description of an AD curve? A says it is a curve obtained by adding the market demand curves of all consumer goods traded in an economy. This one is your demand curve. B says it is a curve determined by the horizontal summation of all individual consumer demand curves for product, not correct. C says it is a curve that shows the total amount of goods and services firms are willing to buy at a given price, which is not correct. And D is the curve that shows the total demand of all goods and services produced at all price levels. So answer is D. Question 22, the data in the table is extracted from the Singapore balance of payments for 2019, and what was the value of the trade balance in the current account? So current account, goods balance would be 134, and service balance would be 8,000. So we have to add these both. Capital and financial account is not under current account, so we can just act, or we can just ignore this. Balancing item is also not in current account, so we can ignore this. So it's 134 plus 8, so it's 142000. But says B. 23, a household's income increased by 3%. Over the same period, the rate of inflation was also 3%, and which statement is correct? So A says both the nominal income of the household and real income of the household increased by 3%, which is not correct. And then for B, the nominal income of the household remained unchanged, while the real income of the household increased by 3%, which is not correct. And then C, the nominal income of the household increased by 3%, while the real income of the household remained unchanged. This one is correct. And D says the nominal income of the household increased by 3%, while the real income of the household increased by 6%, which is not correct. The reason for that is because the household's income increased by 3%. This one is in nominal terms, but then the real inflation is also 3%. So if we adjust the inflation income with inflation, you realize that even though there's an increase in income, but because there's real inflation, so the income in real terms is actually still the same. You're essentially having the same income, just that your money has dropped in value. So that's why for A, it says both the nominal income and the real income increased by 3% is not correct, because there's rate inflation, which is 3%, and then the income increased by 3% as well. So it should be same for real income. And B, it says the nominal income remained unchanged, which is not correct because it already said that the household income increased by 3%. So AB is not correct because of that. And D, the reason why real income household increased by 6% is not correct is because this is only possible if the rate of inflation is negative 3%, which is not in this case. This is a positive 3%. So that means that the rate of inflation would then have to remain the same. The real income will have to remain the same because the income increased by 3% and the rate of inflation is also 3%. If let's say the rate of inflation is 0%, yes, the household income increased by 3%. If it's negative 3%, yes, the household income increased by 6%. But it's not the case here, so it has to be C. 24, a country operates a fixed exchange rate. There is a major fall of international confidence in its government's economic policies, and what is likely to be the result? So A says a fall in the foreign exchange rate, which is not correct because first of all, it's already a fixed exchange rate, so there's no way there's a fall in the foreign exchange rate. But B, it says a fall in its foreign exchange reserves, which is correct because of the fact that there's a major fall in international confidence. That means that your currency would then now be exchanged for other countries' currency. So now your exchange reserves will now have to decrease. C says a rise in capital inflows. There's already a decrease in international confidence, so there's a decrease in capital inflows. And then because of decreased aggregate demand due to this international confidence demand, so your terms of trade will also worsen. So it has to be B. Question 25, in 2018, the inflation rate in Argentina was over 100%, and which combination correctly identifies the winners and losers? So A, it says firms selling goods abroad are winners, and losers would be the households paying back loans, which is not correct. Because household can actually pay back loans due to the hyperinflation, and so no, they're not losers. And B, it says firms unable to decrease real wages and firms paying back loans on fixed money repayments. This one is also not correct. Because firms are unable to decrease real wages, they have to be losers. And so firms paying back loans on fixed money repayments, they would be benefiting the most because of hyperinflation. So they're actually winners here. C says individuals with a high amount of debt at a fixed rate of interest, and loser says household that holds most of their assets in cash. So 25 has to be C. Because now households hold most of their assets in cash, this means that they have this specific amount of cash, like say like $500. The $500 at that particular time could probably get you like maybe a new smartphone that has a decent decent specifications. But then because of the inflation, due to this hyperinflation, maybe $500 you can probably only get like an MP3 player, for example, a very low end MP3 player, something like this. So that's why they are the losers, and the winners will be the individuals with high amount of debt. Because now in real terms, the value is actually much lower. So then, let's say for example, the debt was $500. So now, because of hyperinflation, it's actually not, now probably the person would then be able to get a higher income. And then now the $500 is actually lower in value. So now if you return the money in $500, they're actually paying less in real terms. So that's why they are the winners. D, it says workers on fixed wage contracts, which is not winners, and losers that retire on fixed incomes. Not correct, so answer is C. Question 26, the diagram shows the aggregate demand and aggregate supply for the country. The initial equilibrium is at point E. The sum of price elasticity of demand for imports and exports for the country exceeds 1. A devaluation of the country's exchange rate will cause aggregate demand to change. What will be the new equilibrium? So aggregate demand changes. This means that the aggregate demand would shift to the right because devaluation will result in a shift of the yield curve to the right. So answer should be B. Alright. In question 27, in 2000, Japan was Asia's largest exporter of electrical components, but by 2018 it was ranked 8th. And what might explain this change? So A, it says Japan has a lower opportunity cost in electrical component production, which is not correct. B, it says Japan has experienced greater deflation. If it experienced greater deflation, AD will increase, so it's not correct. C, it says Japan has imposed tariffs on the import of electrical components for its Asian competitors, which is not correct. And D, it says that the Japanese yen has appreciated against the currencies of its Asian competitors, so that's correct. Because when you appreciate your currency, your AD decreases, which means that you'll actually export less because of the fact that your electrical components are actually much more expensive. Question 28, which measure to correct a balance payments current account deficit will be classified as an expenditure reducing policy? This one is in the previous syllabus, but we'll do it anyways. A, it says a reduction in interest rates, which is not correct. B, it says a revaluation of the currency, which is not correct. So it should be an increase in direct tax, so it should be C. Because now we are trying to correct a current account deficit, which means that there should be more inflow of money than outflow. So a reduction in interest rate and a revaluation of currency will result in an increase in AD. You probably get the money out of the country. So AB is not correct. And D says an introduction of foreign exchange control, which is not correct. So it has to be C. Question 29, the diagram shows the AD-AS curves for an economy. Which government action is most likely to cause the equilibrium position to move from X to Y? So there's an increase in AD and also an increase in AS. So A says an increase in the exchange rate that makes locally produced goods less price competitive, both at home and abroad. So if there's an increase in exchange rate, AD curve will shift to the left. So A is not correct. B says an increase in government spending on infrastructure. So the AD-AS curve will shift to the right. That increases the production potential of the economy. So AD curve shift to the right. So yes, is correct. Government spending will be under AD, and then infrastructure will be under AS. So yes, both of them will shift to the right. Say an increase in interest rate that increases the cost borrowing. This will result in the AD curve will shift to the left. So it's not correct. D says an increase in real wages for labor. This will result in AS curve will shift to the left. So it's not correct. So answer is B. Question 30, a country is suffering from severe deflation, and what is most likely to prevent the deflation from worsening? So A, it says increasing income tax, which is not correct, because if you increase income tax, it will make it even worse. And B, it says increasing interest rates to encourage more saving, which will make it even worse. And C, increasing transfer payments to reduce inequality of income, which is correct, because now there's more expenditure. And D, it says revaluing the currency to bring in more revenue from exports, which is not correct, because if you revalue currency, this means that you're going to there will be more deflation and you'll worsen the deflation. So I'll say C. Alright, so this is the end of this paper. I hope you find this video helpful. Do share it out to other people who may need this video. And I hope to see you again in the next video. Till then, this is qiphyedu.